Well, the situation with North and South Korea seems to be getting a bit out of hand, though I'm not too concerned yet, although by North Korean standards, they tend to throw temper tantrums every few years or so just to, maintain, I guess, a bit of dignity, so that they don't look like that they're getting weak in the face of, outside opposition from either the South or the U.S. or anybody else. But this time they seem to be going a bit far by their standards. The basic situation is that, as always, there are people in South Korea who send these leaflets over the border, essentially saying, to North Korean people, hey, you live in poverty, it sucks in North Korea, try and get out of there if you can. Minor annoyances is the kind of thing that, happens in past situations. I think that the Allies did this in Nazi Germany to some extent, or in the Japanese islands. I think the U.S. did it back in World War II, sending down leaflets essentially saying, hey, Japan is bad, you should like America. But for whatever reason, the North Koreans are particularly incensed by this. I don't know, maybe that means that the propaganda works and that people who read these leaflets do start thinking, anti-revolutionary ideas. Maybe they do start thinking, maybe communism isn't for me. Because, it's led to, allegedly now to, a total breakdown in North-South relations. Now, there might be something bigger behind this, like, for example, the Trump's whole, diplomacy, which ended up just turning into a big dumpster fire. I perhaps think that this wouldn't have happened had Trump been able to continue down the road that he was on, had Bolton not, completely set that whole situation ablaze back when he did in Hanoi, which I talked about yesterday in the video about Bolton. Maybe if North Korea had bigger things going on in the realm of foreign relations, they wouldn't have so much, memory to devote to this whole leaflet situation. Now, interestingly enough, Kim Jong-un's sister, the one who was rumored to take over after Kim Jong-un supposedly died, but at the time I was going back and forth on this, pretty sure he's not dead, because just in case any of you missed that, and still think that he is dead, this happens in North Korea from time to time, where the leaders will just not show up in public for quite some time, and so it seemed like the most likely thing was that he was either hiding from the virus or just decided not to go out in public. But either way, it is intriguing that the sister now seems to be playing a more active role internationally when it comes to this situation. She herself threatened to blow up I believe it's called the Kaesong Liaison Office, which is in the DMZ. It's not that same building that you see on TV, or like that place where Trump and Kim shook hands. It's a different building, but it's a pretty decent sized office building where they conduct diplomacy back and forth between North and South Korea. Well, Kim Yo-jong, Kim Jong-un's sister, threatened to blow it up because she said it's totally useless. There's no point in having diplomacy with the South. They are completely unreasonable. That was her point. And then guess what? The North went in, they set charges, and they blew up the building. Which obviously you can say, oh, well, it's just symbolic. The building itself isn't that important. You can always build another building. But the fact that they're going in and blowing stuff up in the DMZ seems to me to be a bit of an escalation. And the act clearly was supposed to have some sort of permanence. I mean, you don't blow up the liaison office if you're just throwing a tantrum for a couple minutes to try and remind everyone who's boss. It seems like you would blow up your liaison office if you have no intention of, resuming relations anytime soon. And now we're getting reports from the U.S. that North Korea is moving troops and ships towards the border to the south, and are, essentially mounting, what looks like an invasion force. Now, of course, they couldn't actually go through with using that, because that would be suicidal. North Korea would cease to exist if they invaded South Korea. In fact, both countries pretty much would cease to exist. So they can't be planning on actually invading South Korea. So what's this whole point? Is it just to escalate tensions and to, have a permanent troop presence on the border like that? That's, someone that's so big to always have these ships there just to serve as a greater deterrent against the South and the U.S.? Interestingly, the U.S. doesn't seem to be responding a whole lot to this. Trump isn't coming out and saying anything about how Little Rocket Man needs to settle down. Nothing of the sort. Back before, at the start of Trump's, sort of outreach to North Korea, he was being very bombastic with them and engaging publicly on Twitter about the issue of North Korea, when North Korea was threatening to nuke Guam and stuff like this. And now we've got, kind of a similar situation where the North is being, quite bombastic with their rhetoric, and Trump is not responding in kind. He's not responding at all. In fact, in South Korea right now, there seems to be a lot of criticism of the U.S. They feel like the U.S. are the ones that got them here. That, Trump in engaging, starting down the path of trying to work with North Korea and then aborting in the middle, essentially created a big mess. And the South Koreans feel like they're the ones, cleaning it up. Like they're the ones who have to deal with the consequences. Trump came in here, did a bunch of stuff, and then just left. And so everything that he was building, there were risks, that came with trying to approach North Korea like that. And apparently, they feel like, they are bearing the brunt of that. I'm sure that Moon Jae-in, the president of North Korea, who's supposed to be, a more dovish kind of guy, one who wants to talk to North Korea, is looking pretty dumb right now. And I do feel bad for him because I do think that in principle, that his approach, or maybe not his specifically, but the more dovish approach is the only real way to make any progress in this situation. Because if you don't try and talk to the North Koreans and become somewhat friendly with them, then the barriers between the two countries will never start to degrade in any way. But at a time like this, someone like Moon just looks, too weak. Although I guess in Trump's case, maybe he just has written off the whole Korean situation for this term, and he's focused on re-election and says, there's nothing I can get done with North Korea, before November, so there's no point in even thinking about it. Of course, at this point, the South Korean attitude seems to be that, we don't want any American president's help anymore. We are not going to trust in them to take leadership on this issue. We're not going to let them try and, run any kind of relationship with the North. Any relationship that the U.S. wants to have with them will have to be through us and under our leadership. Because, Trump and Bolton, essentially, because after Bolton screwed things up, Trump never really picked the ball back up. So I guess you could say Bolton dropped the ball, or smacked the ball out of the air, more like, because he didn't even try to catch it. Trump never picked it back up, and now there's one more reason why all this is going on that I haven't discussed yet, and that's internal affairs within North Korea. Are their outward actions really demonstrative of what's going on inside North Korea? Could it be that the reason why Kim's sister, Kim Yo-jong, is sort of taking charge of this situation and being very bombastic because she has something to prove internally, because she's signaling to her other party members, or perhaps you could say even to the general populace, that she's a strong leader or something like that. Because the reality is, we don't know what the internal politics of North Korea are like. We have no idea what sort of palace intrigue is going on, and so all of this, might just be driven more by an attempt at people in North Korea to signal things to one another internally. And so that's where my ability to try and analyze this ends, because that is, anything past this point, other than just stating that it's possible, is pure speculation. I can't say, anything more specific than that. So the best thing when it comes to North Korea, I think, is to try and have an open mind, and don't ever assume that the easy answer that you're given for why something is happening is actually the real reason. So with that said, if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.